All right, I am your. Oh, I don't even know how to start this. Welcome to the. What are we again? Welcome to the Vagabond Gamecast. I'm your co-host Steven, and this is Matt. How are you doing, Matt?
Or as I call it, the podcast, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
are we
yeah,
doing the podcast? What's new with the podcast?
yeah.
Well, it's Friday. It's been one of those weeks. I'll say I'm in a pretty good mood. Just gonna coast through and hopefully have an okay weekend.
I need one of those soundboards so that whenever you say it's Friday, I can like call up Rebecca Black.
I'm sure they are readily available.
Yeah,
The soundboard, I mean.
yeah. I just don't want one.
Yeah.
I want one, and I don't want one.
I mean, you could
Uh,
just bookmark one.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess our topic of the day du jour is we both started reading Jason Schreier's Press Reset.
Indeed. Indeed. Is that how you say his name?
I'm going to
We
say
we
I
can go
hope
back and
so.
edit that part.
Jason. I mean, it's
Schreier is what I always assumed, but I could be the oddball.
sure Jason Schreier.
Cool. All right. All right. And you finished the first 3 chapters.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. We are in the same place.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. So I mean, has it conjured up any thoughts for you so far?
Let me ask ahead of time first. Did you read his
Yeah.
first book?
I did.
Blood and Pixels?
Whenever that came out, I guess that came out 2017. So yeah, I did read that.
So quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise for myself, I don't know. I feel so. I read the intro to this one, and he kind of describes how he's, I guess, like approaching a fairly similar topic, just like
Hmm.
whatever, being in the industry and how hard it is, I guess, generally, right? From like a different angle. It's yeah, I don't know. It's fun for me, but there's similar stories. I'd say definitely this one's more conjured thoughts that are conjured. Um, I feel fortunate that my life is more stable in a lot of ways than people. It seems like quite a sacrifice, at least for a lot of people, to pursue uh, this particular career in a lot of ways, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, they always talk about the starving artist and so forth. So there's these careers that people do out of love, love of the craft, etc. And
Yeah.
there's the successful people who become superstars and make lots of money and so on and so forth. And the people who kind of find happiness, but maybe struggle, etc. I mean, these are, we could have 20 podcast episodes about that exactly. There's just so
Yeah.
many people talking about this on the internet. So I guess, like I guess the one thing is, as someone who, like yourself, almost certainly just like reads stuff on the internet or has read Gamma Sutra and so forth. Like I feel like a lot
Mhm.
of these stories, this isn't like shedding some light on the industry in some way I didn't know. It's kind of like what I expected, but it's
Mhm.
always interesting. I guess like the author's writing style is interesting, and he just kind of tells the story in a well paced way, so it's fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess the first story. Why don't we start at the top? Well, let me. Okay, what did you think overall, generally?
Well, I
Let's
mean,
start there.
I find it interesting because you're not working in
Yeah.
games to the same extent that I am.
Or
Um,
0 to 100. Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Unless you call this working in games,
I mean,
the
it's not fair.
podcast.
It's not fair to say zero for you because we have attempted on multiple occasions to make a game together, right?
Right. It's never
Uh,
been my livelihood.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never relied on income from a game industry job to survive.
Right. But so that's what's interesting is like this is 100% my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting for me because like I worked in film and two of the no sorry three of the three film industry companies that I worked at don't exist anymore. Whereas
Didn't one of
um
them go under while you were there, or
yeah
shortly after you left?
so I mean it's not completely fair to say that they don't exist anymore because they were just like bought or whatever. So like
Mm-hmm.
the first company I was at was bought I think twice since I left.
Mm-hmm.
The second company I was at just 100% doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The third company I was at went bankrupt and then found a buyer and now exists in a new form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've had more instability from my film career than I did from the games career that I had. Like the first game company that I worked at still exists. The second one merged into a different one, and then the third one still exists. So it's I don't know. It's interesting to read these stories that are about like studios that are opening and closing, and how volatile the games industry is. But from my perspective, it's always been more stable than what I used to have.
I wonder how common that is. How many people are like, I was living this unstable life, and then I found my game industry job, and it's like, man, finally. I also, I mean, I don't know. Also don't know how much you want to talk about it, but
Mhm.
like your personal career and experience in games, how
Mhm.
normal would you say that is? I guess for me, of course, the type of stories that are always highlighted are like
Yeah.
what they've talked about in this book, which sounds very unstable, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's people who've just worked at EA or something for
Well, that's
20
that's the
years and they're
thing.
happy, right? Maybe
That's
that's their
that's the,
thing.
yeah. Like, I mean, I feel like what I've done is pretty normal. Like,
Hmm.
the first studio that I was at was, so that was the Coalition, and that
Hmm.
I've actually got some like memories conjured up of that, because in chapter 2 of this book it talks about BioShock,
Hmm.
and how they had to get Rod Ferguson to come in and kind of close off the game. And
Hmm.
Rod Ferguson is who was in charge of the Coalition while I was there, so I've got experience working under him. So the Coalition was a new studio
Hmm.
kind of when I joined up. So everyone, like, no one had been there long term, but they made Gears of War, which was an Epic Games property
Right.
previously, and there were a lot of people on Gears of War 4 who had worked at Epic on Gears of War, like Rod being one of them.
Hmm.
So it seems interesting that there were a lot of people that are kind of like sticking with the franchise.
Yeah.
And of course it was a new studio, so there was lots of people that had come in from other places. BioWare Montreal was a new studio, but they had shipped a lot of people there from BioWare Edmonton. Like,
Okay.
so there were a lot of long time BioWare people in there. So that, like, this idea that there's people that are sticking with the company for a decade, uh, just to me is almost unheard of when it comes to film.
Hmm.
I mean, it happens. Like, you have like the Glenn Keanes or whoever who stuck with Disney for well over a decade. It definitely happens. Um, but yeah, it's so this all feels normal to me. The fact that there are some people who enjoy where they are and stick where they are, and some people who, for whatever reason, decide they want a different change of tone or city or whatever, and uh, ship off somewhere else after production ends.
I
Uh,
mean, yeah, I feel like that's a little bit of a different spin, certainly. Like the theme of this book, the way I'm
mhm.
reading it, it's like all these people wanted to stick around, but their funding evaporated, or their
Yeah,
boss suddenly gathered everyone and said, "Get out," and then it was like such an upheaval.
yeah.
I think definitely from what I've seen, heard, even just like from you on both games and film, it seems like I feel like people going into those industries go in with this mindset that they're going to have to do that, or it's just well
Mhm.
known you're going to have to do that, and it's almost
Yeah.
like maybe it's a choice that's forced on you a little bit. Like you have less opportunity not to do that if you'd rather not do that. But
Mhm.
people, from what I've seen, again, I could be just talking out of my ass, but like some people kind of take that as a piece of the adventure. Like I know I'm going to be going to all these different cities. That's fun, maybe.
Yeah.
And I see like in my industry, it's like you kind of still see that. I mean, my industry is quite stable. I could just
Mhm.
stay at big company X for 30 years if I want to.
Mhm.
But when you look at people, they'll often switch companies every 3 to 5 years. Maybe not
Yeah.
like 1 year, like my project ended, see ya, but like fairly often. And that, of course, companies kind of cluster in the same areas, kind of. But I do see people going
Mhm.
like up and down the west coast of the U.S. Some people will like maybe relocate to where they're from, and you kind of see that spreading out a bit. So
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting because it's 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 like you can kind of do that if you want, but there's
Mhm.
maybe a little more opportunity, maybe a lot more, I don't know, to just like stay in one place if that's preferable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely hit and miss. Like, there's a lot of people. Maybe I just perceive it a little bit more because of film. The film industry,
Mm.
the places that I worked were definitely populated largely with people who were fine to move around. Like, I worked
Yeah.
with some of the same people in Toronto as I did in Australia as I did in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Like the it wasn't just me moving around, it was other people, and some people really love that. And at the same time, like there was this whole thing, like when I was working in film, it was the same time as Life of Pi came out,
Hmm.
and there was a big thing with protests at the I don't know, whatever the award show
Academy
is.
Awards or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something because lack of credit. I
Yeah,
only vaguely remember. Yeah.
yeah. And but part of it is like people from LA. Like there's a lot of people in America. Did you ever see the movie? Um, oh crap! It was a big musical that was popular with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone.
La La Land.
Yeah, La La
La
Land.
Land. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Um,
did see it.
well, I mean, I had this feeling when watching that like America really loves to kind of um, go crazy with this idea of like California dreaming, and like if you go to Hollywood, this is where it's at.
Yeah, yeah.
Like all the actors want to go there, all the visual effects people want to go there too. Like if you want to be interested in film, like this is where you go. And there's
That's
lots of people that had that dream. They want to
the
go there.
film mecca.
They want to stay there forever.
Hmm.
And there was all these, and still is to these days, tax subsidies that are going on where like people are going to Vancouver because it's cheaper labor, and that's
Hmm.
why I'm in Montreal. Is it's cheaper labor, and that's fine for some people. They don't care about moving around. They don't necessarily have a home base they want to set up, but there are a lot of people that certainly want to just anchor themselves to a spot and never move and have what's the phrase? Set up roots. Um,
Not too familiar to you, I know.
yeah. So I mean, there's definitely people with both attitudes in the industry. So I'm sure some of the people who are most affected by a studio closure are going to be the people who wanted something secure and permanent, and of course that's going to attract the attention of someone like Jason, who's going to be doing interviews. Like the person that's completely fine with moving on is not kicking up a stink and not really going to attract the attention.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. It's interesting. Again, I don't want to focus too much on one industry because it's
Hmm.
not really relevant or interesting. But like, I feel like I guess that's where the biggest difference is. Is like I don't see a lot of people like lose their job and then kind of hit the road out of necessity. It's more like they feel like it, so they do. And that's
Yeah,
where like it's a stability, but it's also a flexibility. Like
yeah.
I guess it's interesting. You're looking at the game industry almost from the I guess from the perspective of someone that's been in film, which in your
Hmm.
experience was less stable.
Yeah.
When I wanted to, so when I was going to school, I majored in electronics, and I imagined myself going to a company, I don't know, like say like IBM, and working on like circuit designs, or working at one of the big electronics makers to make household electronics or something, or
Hmm.
like cell phones or something. And that
Cool
industry,
1980s microwaves.
yeah, 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 right. Um, so, I actually have no idea what it's like working in that industry nowadays. Especially, I think a lot of that has moved. Like you don't really see those jobs in especially in North America per se so much. But uh, for a long time, that was like a stable job, right? You get a job
Hmm.
at IBM and you work there for 30, 40 years, then you retire, right? And so like for me coming into even like tech and especially looking at the games industry, like I'm coming from the other end, right? Where I guess I expected, perhaps as a super naive 18-year-old or whatever, to go
Hmm.
and work at some big electronics company, Sharp or something, and then just make stuff forever and it's going to be so awesome and then retire. And
Hmm.
instead, it's like I'm jumping companies every 5, 6 years, whatever. In games, it's like you jump at the end of a project. So, yeah, I don't know. My limited lens into what's going on is only through articles and books like this, where it's like, of course, it highlights those cases as you've called out. So
Hmm.
actually, I think your experience is kind of an anchoring thing for me because it's like I correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't really seen since you've gone into games like a time where you were suddenly in a really bad position because you were shocked with a decision someone had made and now you're scrambling to find your feet so
Yeah,
much, right?
I mean, luckily that hasn't happened to me, and I mean, you got to take into consideration that I am speaking from a position of privilege, where there's like survivorship bias. Like
Yeah,
I have had things kind of work out in my favor,
yeah.
but I mean, I mean, you go on Twitter right now. There's the whole Blizzard Activision stuff going on right now. There's certainly people who aren't in a good state
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and maybe they are forced to relocate to different companies and stuff, not for purely fun reasons.
Yep.
um There was one page that I did take a screenshot of because, of course, I'm reading this book on Google Play,
Yep.
um, and it's from chapter. I don't remember if it's chapter 2 or 3, but it's talking about Frey. She says,
3. Yep.
"And okay, I'm going to put several years of my life into a game, and then maybe it'll do well, and maybe it won't, and then I'm going to move, and then I'm going to do it again, and maybe it'll do well, and maybe it won't, but nothing will ever be mine, and this will never end. I'm on this treadmill that will never end." And I do totally relate to that component of it. It is hard to figure out where that balance is in this of like attachment, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I feel like most people who are making games are doing it because they love games more so than because it's just the job that they felt
Yeah.
like they needed to do after high school.
Almost certainly, I would guess. Yeah.
Like I don't know. I don't, I guess I can't speak about everyone's passions, but I feel like when you're going to work at the local print studio printing flyers for the weekly things that get left on people's doorsteps or something, because that's a job that I had. I don't feel like the people that were in there, that was like a dream for them. It was just like that was the convenient job that happened to pop up, and they stayed there.
Yep. I
I
guess
I
some people, sorry to interject quickly, some
mhm.
people find their passion or they get passionate about stuff. Like I know
Yeah,
people
yeah,
who
yeah.
are, yeah, like we previously had gone through the process of getting a mortgage, and the mortgage guy was like the most passionate human I've met in my life.
Hmm.
I mean, personally, getting people mortgages is like the last thing I would be able to muster any passion for. And I doubt he, as like a young person, had that passion, right? Like no one says when they're 16, that's this is my job goal, but like he's doing it, he loves it. I guess
Yeah.
people find their passion somewhat. Whereas, yeah, definitely game people. I bet it's fairly rare that they happened into the game industry and then that suddenly it was their passion. But I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, go on.
but
Sorry.
well, I just feel that that's like a weird, it's a weird job because of that, though, because like
Yeah.
when you're on a team with, let's say, 80 people, and
Mm-hmm.
you're all working on making a game, like you may have ideas, but so does everyone else, and everyone has to kind of draw that line as to like which hills are they going to die on, like which features are they going to try and champion
Yeah.
versus which ones are they going to just let someone else have, and you're not always going to be happy with everything, and it is totally this feeling of like, where do I draw the line of what am I doing because I'm getting paid and it's my job, and what am I doing because I love it? And if you are doing it and you love it, and the game isn't a success, or everyone else doesn't like it or whatever, it's definitely weird from my perspective of
Weird
just like
indeed.
trying to draw lines of, it's a job.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. I'd say there you might be surprised. Like there is definitely parallels outside of games and creative
Hmm.
industries. Like I find that in tech industry too, right? Like there's
Yeah.
people massively crazy passionate about projects, and at some point, like I myself have been really excited for some projects, and some projects it's been like, well, it's a job. I'm going to do this thing I committed to. I'm going to try and do it as well as I can and move on.
Hmm.
And I guess like probably for creative people especially, they're like you said. I mean, I don't want to imply anything, but
Hmm.
generally, if you choose to do art as a career, it's going to be less stable. It's maybe going to be less financially rewarding than going and being a lawyer or something, right? But then that's not reward. Like the day to day, the time being spent isn't as rewarding. And so the artist is there doing
Hmm.
that job because it's what they love to do and not because of those other reasons. And so, like, yeah, like if that's the way you've structured your career, probably every second drawing that line is like a bigger, I don't know, like something that would weigh on your mind a lot
Hmm.
heavier than say a lawyer or something.
Yeah, but it is, but I think that's part of um, what creates these situations in the first place, where like if you're looking at this book and the stories of like people doing crunch and stuff, it's like people are largely largely willing to put themselves through that because they feel so passionate and they want this product to be out, and they want,
Yeah.
I don't know, their 10 out of 10 ratings or whatever. um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, so I totally completely understand everything that I'm reading in there. Like they're all emotions that I felt, even though I haven't necessarily been at a studio that's um, or a game studio that has shut down around me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you opened with, I'm not someone who's been like relying on the game industry for money or whatever, but like
Hmm.
I can see it even just as an outside observer. Like it's very, I don't know, it's like I think a very relatable human experience in many ways.
Well, it's part of what has been interesting for me reading this stuff is like wondering, I guess, what could have been or what bullets I have dodged, because like so you and I, when we lived in Vancouver, started up a company called Sprixelsoft. And I remember while we were trying to figure this out, like it started with us just doing this. Like we're just brainstorming a game and trying to figure out what we're going to make. And as we start doing that, we start going around to like local events and stuff, like the full indie
That was so
meetup
much
and
fun.
stuff.
Those events were a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, there was a lot of that was fun. And but we both had full-time day jobs while we're doing this, right? And I remember like we started to talk to some other people and they're just like, "Yeah, man, you just got to do it. You just got to quit your day job and just do it. And it doesn't matter how much debt you go into or anything. You just got to live the life." And there was a large part of me that was like kind of inspired and wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But also like, man, that's a lot of risk to just quit your job and not have any income and try to do that. And like reading these stories in chapter 3, I guess, where they are trying to do that, it's like I don't know that I could have handled that stress.
So 2 points, I think. First, it's definitely a gutsy, enormously courageous decision in a way. I think it's a very different thing when you're like 18 or 22 or
Yeah,
something than when you're, 30, talking with your spouse about starting a family, blah blah blah, that
yeah,
stuff, right? It's very different. I also think like, I mean, imagine you had never really had a good job in your life and you were kind of a drifter and
yeah.
whatever. And someone offered you this job that was really, really fun. It's going to be so awesome and it's going to pay you 50K a year. Like to you,
Yeah.
it's like, what a dream, right? Whereas if you're someone who has worked really hard, you're now making 150K, everything's stable, everything's fun, but there's this dream job. But
Hmm.
it's only going to pay you 50K a year. You know what I mean? It's harder to come out of stability having walked that path
Yeah.
than to like having never even experienced that, take those risks, right? And I feel like a lot of those, like not everyone, first of all, and
Hmm.
regardless of it, I again think they're courageous, and it's awesome they're chasing their passions. But that was what it was for me, I guess. I had been walking a more stable path, although the job I was working at the time afforded me practically zero financial freedom in the city of
Hmm.
Vancouver, which was insanely expensive to live in, and is apparently way worse right now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I don't know, it was kind of, as you've called it, it was terrifying to think that way.
Yeah.
It's my biggest problem now too. Like I've just had this, I've it's like what, kind of a golden handcuffs. There's nothing to feel
Hmm.
sorry about for me. Like I'm extremely lucky, but just to take that career path, I would be sacrificing very many things about my life
Yeah.
just to be able to spend full time on a project. Maybe this is a digression, but like I guess I've been. I mean, we've kind of taken a stab at a few game projects. I've
Hmm.
had a really hard time stabilizing and finding time. I think it's a problem for me to like, in retrospect, maybe try and maintain a full time job
Hmm.
and I guess commit to things on the side, especially when my job can be quite overwhelmingly, I don't know, I wouldn't say unstable, but like there's just times
Hmm.
you have to focus on work and that week kind of goes away, right? Like it's just that kind of non routine allowing job. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But like I guess like just like dinkling along on the side on some little project, it feels okay to me if there's no one to disappoint, I guess, and I was just kind of working on my own thing. Of course it's going to be massively slow, but
Hmm.
I kind of take satisfaction in that. Like I think looking forward, thinking about it, um, that's where I would derive, I guess, what people seek when they go into the game industry is going to of course be different, but for a lot of people it's like their own ownership or ability to
Hmm.
contribute ideas and design a game and then release it, etc. Like that, I guess I can kind of scratch that itch just by doing these little side projects
Hmm.
without sacrificing kind of my financial stability.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which sounds like I don't know, maybe that's like a cop out or the most pathetic, wimpy approach to this that one could take. But I don't know. I guess like where I'm at right now, especially with two young kids, blah blah blah, it just feels like my best way to scratch that itch.
Yeah.
Whereas like at the time in Vancouver, as you've called out, that was, man, that was almost 10 years ago. That's insane. That is insane. Wow. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, wow. Sometimes I like wake up in the morning and I think my kid is 6 years old. It's
Yeah.
been 6 years since I was childless.
Yeah.
But 10, like almost 10 years is wild. Yeah.
Yeah, we started off with our project Birthright that we shelved because we were too afraid of it taking 5 years to finish.
I imagine you still have everything, right?
I maybe probably I think so.
When someone wins the lottery or something, we'll have to dig up some stuff.
Yeah,
Bam.
yeah.
I don't.
But
Go ahead.
that's so. I mean, that's basically it for me. Is just I mean, reading all these stories definitely. I don't know if I were reading like some sort of stories about the dairy industry or something, I definitely wouldn't be identifying with it nearly as much. But like
Yeah.
everything that I'm reading is like stuff that I've thought about and felt. I guess I think it's a well written book,
Yeah.
even though I'm so early into it.
I mean, have you read like a lot of? So I liked his first book, and I liked even like
Mhm.
Masters of Doom and stuff. Like a lot of these
That one I don't know.
game. You don't know that one. It's just like the story of Doom. You know, John Carmack, excuse me, and John Romero, and blah blah
Right,
blah
right, right.
blah. How they came to be and whatever. People cite it all the time. I found it very. I don't know. I found the writing almost like amateurish. If I want to
Hmm.
throw like kind of like a maybe a negative, but in the end, like that almost it kind of just it made it fun. I guess it
Hmm.
was like reading like a website account of what's happening. I guess, um, but maybe we should talk about kind of how maybe we should reflect on the three stories a little bit or the three
Hmm.
chapters. What did you?
Um,
How did you feel
I already
reading?
forget what the first one was.
The first one was Warren Spector.
Oh, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
so
guess
I
I
mean,
was
I
so
think
sorry.
that I go ahead.
Really quick, I was just gonna say I actually like how he kind of opened with three uh, very different perspectives. Like instead of like here's this
Hmm.
a story of a whole bunch of people who are like 25 and in their first 5 years they've had a lot of turbulence. It's like he starts with the kind of industry veteran and goes over his whole career.
Yeah,
Then he goes into like a kind of like a superstar in his team, and then the third story is more the young people. So I
yeah.
liked that he started with the kind of the looking back on a long-ish career, and here's all the
Hmm.
turbulence I experienced. So you can kind of put the whole thing into perspective. I thought that was a good choice. Go ahead. I don't want to like. I know you're holding on to the thought.
Well, no, I mean, I was gonna say kind of the same thing. Like, I mean, maybe that's why I've got kind of like a positive feeling about the book right now, is because I just finished chapter 3 about the indies. Um, but yeah, like, I think that stuff with Warren Spector was kind of happening around the time I was leaving San Francisco. I think
Mm.
because I remember it being like this. And I got to double check it now. Like, when did the Disney Infinity stuff close? Disney Infinity. I can't type and try to be entertaining at the same time. Uh, Infinity closed. So that was 2016. So yeah,
Somewhere in
that
there.
was around the time that I was leaving.
Hmm.
That I had just left San Francisco, and it's I don't know. I remember reading the articles about this at the time, and just I don't know, man. I'm not a fan of the mega corporations. Uh, like the fact that like Disney and like Apple and stuff are they're just like the biggest like Jeff Bezos money companies in the world, where you can do whatever you want, and you're just so concerned about stock prices and being at like the exponential growth mega corporation that you can be, that it's I just it feels so dirty to me. And like this idea that like he's got these games coming out but they're not profitable enough,
Enough.
it's just like, why would I give you $1 and get $1.10 back
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I get, it's like, man, you're that's 10% growth, why are you complaining? Just like, I don't know.
It's
It's weird because I like I read a story about that last night. That Scarlett Johansson
yeah,
is
yeah.
suing Disney because they breached her contract by releasing Black Widow in theaters and streaming simultaneously. And it's
Yep.
just like I I hate everyone in this story.
I know. I totally get it. It's like the second I read that, I looked up Scarlett Johansson's net worth, and it's like
Yeah,
130 million. Now I
yeah,
don't. It's weird. I kind of so the word sue, like when you hear it, there's almost this connotation. It's like they're out to get somebody, right? It's like I'm going to sue your ass. I'm going to take you down, right? But
yeah,
it's really
yeah,
just about like a contract was made and you want to square it, right? Like you think it's unfair now or it's
yeah,
not being honored, so you're just trying to make it fair. So part of me, I mean, she's just doing the rounds. Like this is what we agreed
yeah,
on. I'm just bringing in my lawyers to set things right. At the
yeah,
same time, it's hard for I guess normal people like me and you when we see like I don't know if I had like that much money. I mean, I guess I would prefer I have more money instead of Megacorp X has the more money.
yeah.
But at some point, I'd just be like, "What you guys?" I'd like release a nasty statement and then go back to my enormous Malibu house and just chill. I think.
Yeah, I mean it's hard being an adult because now I can understand everyone's perspective a lot better. Like
Yeah,
when you're a kid, it's a lot easier to just be like, "No, you're wrong."
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so it's like, yeah, I totally have that perspective of like, you're rich as dogs. Just leave it alone and be happy with your money bin, Scrooge McDuck. And I at the same time completely understand her. Like Disney breached the contract.
Yeah.
And it's like as much as Disney wants to put out this good Samaritan argument that because of the pandemic, not everyone can go to the theaters. We need to make sure that the most people possible can enjoy these little nuggets of beauty that we've created.
Yeah,
Uh, they're totally just doing it so that they can make money.
of course they
Like,
are. Yeah,
like it's totally just about how much money can they make, and the fact that they are s- weaseling their way out of a contract is
part of that.
small potatoes for them, I guess. Um, but yeah, that's the thing that I got with Warren Spector is just like they're the Disney Infinity stuff. I know was quite beloved by a lot of people, but it wasn't profitable enough, so you got to close it down. And they don't think about the fact that there's like hundreds of people that are doing this for a living, and you're totally just playing with their lives. Like I
It's
don't know.
a really weird thing. Believe me, I'm not. I'm with you. I'm not siding with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pure capitalists or anything. But I always I always read these kind of stories, and I get these knee jerk reactions, kind of like you. It's like, wow, that's evil.
Hmm.
Wow, wow. And I always try and see it from the perspective of the other side. It's like I play devil's advocate with
Yeah, yeah.
myself, and so I'm like thinking about this, and it's just kind of weird to me. I mean, like say like Pixar. I might have even mentioned Pixar. I don't know, but like Pixar, they're like I'm not even the biggest Pixar fan. Like obviously what
Hmm.
they're doing is high quality and it's impressive. It's just not a lot of the stuff they put out. It's not to my taste, I guess. So this
Hmm.
isn't some sort of I don't know like personal shield
Hmm.
for them or something. But generally they're thought of as this very innovative company, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like could they have achieved everything they've achieved both creatively and technologically without going public? I really wonder, like the point of going public, or well, not the point, but a point from a business justification is that you now have more funding, right? You're now better financed and able to, hire the best researchers or hire the best, experts in whatever technology you're working in or whatever, etc. And it's this double-edged sword because I guess if, and I'm throwing out ifs, I don't exactly know, but if you needed to go public to get all of that to be able to move forward, the the other side of going public is that you now have shareholders to
Hmm.
report to, and um, like the only reason they gave you money to begin with is because they expect their payout, right? And so
Yeah.
you are incentivized, motivated, even
Hmm.
like almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, it's like uh, a promise, I guess, in a way that you're going to do everything you can to get them their money back. And so
Hmm.
there is that business pure capitalist, like we just need money, money, money motivation that just automatically kicks in as of having gone private
Hmm.
or sorry, public. And so if the right thing to do was to never go into that situation so that you can protect your workers and not just be purely capitalistic in every business sense ever and focus on your art craft, you would forever be in the situation where you wouldn't be able to hire the best
Hmm.
technologists or whatever. And it's like what's the middle ground that would have allowed that high quality of work to happen without suddenly being beholden to the the desires, the demands, I guess, of shareholders, and the need to like achieve exponential growth. I
I
guess
mean,
like it's the last thing. It's like if you look at tech industry stocks, like I don't give a shit really, but like when there's a stock announcement, it's interesting. You read the stock announcement, and the companies will say things like, "We've done fantastic. We've doubled our revenue. Money, money, money. Blah 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 blah. We've doubled our revenue. However, you know, next year we probably won't quite do the same thing. Like coronavirus happened, this happened, that happened. So just a heads up." And even though they're making double as much money as they did, the stock price goes down like 20%. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, like there's like these, yeah, I get it. There's like from the shareholder point of view, there's this hard business expectations. And
yeah,
then from the, like, I just want to make amazing things and this is profitable. Why are you kicking my project to the bottom of the totem pole
yeah,
perspective? Yeah. And so like, I don't know. Again, I'm not taking that side. I'm wondering how to make everyone happy so that that side can like be happy too, I guess.
yeah.
It's a weird thing to me.
I mean, I'm as you know, biased against billionaires. I mean,
Sure.
I'm not one, so how can I be pro billionaire? Um,
Yeah, sure.
but I mean, I just looked it up because I guess I'd forgotten that Pixar did have an IPO. I was about to correct you and be like, oh no, they're bought by Disney. They're blah blah blah. But yeah, the 1995, I guess Pixar had the IPO, and the
Mhm.
first thing Steve Jobs did was call up his friend Larry Ellison and say, "Hello, Larry, I made it." And it's just like, you know,
That's how you know you've made it. You now have billions of dollars being generated by your creative endeavor.
but it, but it,
That's when
but
you say I made it, right?
yeah, but how many of these IPOs are solely about the company and how much of it is about the people at the top who own the company? Like, he didn't care that his company is successful. He cared that he's a billionaire, right? Um,
I have, yeah, I have no pushback. I mean, if you look at startups, the idea is that it's like the 10 people start the company and everyone has a share. But then it's
yeah,
the same thing. Eventually, by the time they IPO, it's like 500 people and all the money comes to those first 10 people and everyone else is just like the helpers who get a little
yeah,
chunk, right?
yeah.
Especially these companies that have been around a long, long time. I don't know. I imagine
But
like it's kind of different. Anyway, go on.
well, I was, just to bring it back to the topic, like so I mean that was my perspective with the Warren Spector thing is just the sadness, I guess, of the
Big companies.
corporations, and I guess that was kind of the same with the next company. I unfortunately can't remember the name of the studio. I'm really bad with names, but where
Is
they're
this?
working on BioShock.
Yeah. I didn't write it down, and I'm also very bad with names.
Like the fact that they're saying that, like, the guy who's like kind of the visionary for it or whatever, he's kind of burned out. He doesn't want to be part of this 200-person team anymore. He wants to break off and just have the small team experience. Like, I totally get that, and it's so disheartening to me, the fact that, like, they made it sound like this is completely cool. Let's do it. We'll help you out. You can start your studio. Everything's going to be great. And then they just lay off everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's just like, a studio is so much more than just one person's vision at the top. Uh, that's it's so disheartening how much that gets seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We should do a. I mean, I don't know. I almost wish like if there was a similar book, or if Jason Schreier did a follow up on like just companies that were more like that. Like I think of like Klei Entertainment. I mean, I know they just.
Yeah,
I guess they were just bought out
Danny
by
Ching.
Tencent or something. But
Oh, were
like,
they? I missed that news.
yeah, like I guess everything ends in the same cesspit. But
Either
anyway,
Tencent or NetEase.
whatever. Anyway, maybe it's great. Maybe everything's fine. I don't want to criticize their company currently. Maybe it's wonderful, seriously. But like for the longest time, they were just this little scrappy company that was
Hmm.
surviving on their own. They never IPO'd. They made it happen. Like it just seemed like if I was looking to start my own company and run a game company, I would have been super happy if it went exactly as it did for them.
Hmm.
I mean, I have no idea, of course. Maybe they struggled financially, or maybe there was whatever. But as far as I know, like
They were
everything publicly,
they've been pretty much growing since I came to know of them.
yeah. Well, there you go. That's so like a highlight of companies that kind of did build the ideal, the game dev dream versus
Hmm.
like, I mean, we're reading like the first three stories were undeniably, I guess, ups and downs, but certainly
Yeah,
lots of downs, right?
yeah.
I guess the second, I'm calling them stories, the first three chapters. The second, so you're referring to Ken Levine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of the central figure in the second chapter. I actually took some positives out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree he had some projects that ended exactly as you said, like he formed a team, and then it was all him, and then
Yeah.
the the megacorp that he was working under kind of decided we're done with this, or like, if you're not going to be part of it, we're just going to nix everybody and not really care. Like a lot of negatives, but
Yeah.
I don't know, like I guess you're right about like the collateral damage of just these people under this guy, but like he had some success in kind of like meandering the industry and doing what he wanted. Like it ended
Mm-hmm.
kind of somewhat almost like negatively, I guess, but saying like he kind of was able to go and start his own small team, and now they've been working for like 10 years and we haven't seen anything yet, but whatever. But
Yeah.
like, I guess like if you're able to get enough credibility, you can kind of like maneuver through the corporate web of what's out there and land
Mm-hmm.
yourself in a role where you can go away for 10 years and just work on your dream project or something. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
almost like some kind of little takeaway that's positive there, I guess. Your
Yeah.
spin, I think, kind of puts it back in just perspective. Like this, I think you're totally right too. It's like there's like a few powerful figures that are given that power, and everyone else is just kind of swept away when the time is right, which is extremely unfortunate.
Yeah.
And kind of the theme of the third chapter, I guess, in a way, where it's like about the little guys,
Yeah.
little gals and little guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's more relatable, I guess. But it's been interesting for me at my three studios because, like I said, the first one that I was at, the coalition, it was hard for me to understand um, what it's like being in the game industry at that point, since it was my first job in the industry and I didn't really
Mm,
have a benchmark. Um, but it was a reasonable size studio, and Rod Ferguson was heading that up, and there was a little bit of crunch, but everything was handled fairly well. There was this big
right.
mentality there at that studio that like you play the game and everyone's contributing to it, whereas like with EA it felt so impersonal to me. Like there was these tasks lists, everyone get them done. They don't really care if you're playing the game. Like there's a group of people that do that, and you just take for granted the instructions they give you.
Yeah.
And that was like a mega corporation where there's people all around the world, and I it that place just wasn't for me, and I had to leave, and now I'm at an indie studio for the past couple years, and it's 30 people, and like everyone basically is just like constantly trying their best to contribute.
Yep.
um and it's been interesting being at these three different studios that have like such a wide range of what the work environment is, and I feel like the first place that I was at was like right in the middle.
I see. It's good. That's the order you went in. You didn't.
Hmm.
It's not like right now you're at the company that's heartless and not really uh, making you happy in that way or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but but that's the sort of thing where I feel like the coalition had a good sense of what makes a good studio and stuff. Like Rod Ferguson was kind of in charge, but when he eventually left, um, which he did, I think last year, they didn't close up the studio and lay everyone off. They found someone else to be in charge.
Yeah. 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 That's. I mean, again, that's probably just like that pure capitalism. Like they know
Yeah,
the people making all the money decisions know that that's the selling point. It's like person X works for us. People
yeah,
care about this project solely for that reason. No one's going to care. It's not going to make money. Nix it, right?
yeah,
And it's that evil that comes out of that purely capitalist way of thinking about things.
yeah.
Would be my guess. I'm gonna say something maybe controversial. Like if I wish we had an audience. Like people might push back on this. I'd love to hear what people think. But I'm just like, for me
So,
as
so
someone working.
someday we can do this live for our audience.
Yeah, people will call in. Like I guess for me, I just pondered for a long time like what it would mean to go as a software engineer and go and work at a game company. Like I guess if you're at a smaller game company, I think at smaller companies, your role, like what you actually do, tends to kind of bend and push outside of your actual on paper role somewhat, right?
Hmm.
Like you might be an art person, but you'll have maybe more design decisions because there's going to be times when it's like 10 people sitting in a room and you have ideas and people will kind of listen to you. But like especially at like a bigger company, like say EA, what
Hmm.
would motivate me as a software person to go work at EA? Like I feel like like the kind of the problem space in games is very interesting, actually, very very interesting. But there's just so many like super interesting problems, like across software in general, right? And like if you're into more like creative things like game design or something, like I don't know that you would scratch that itch by doing a software job at like EA or something. Again, this is where like I'm ignorant. I'm declaring my ignorance. Maybe there's something I'm missing here, but I can see maybe more why like an artist would want to go and work in the game industry, even if it meant working at big corp whatever, and being kind of one of the small fries. What they're building is in the game, right? I feel
I
like a
mean,
software person, you're quite replaceable, really, right? Like I don't
well,
know.
I can't fairly comment because that wasn't my department, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they do have proprietary software that they work on. Like their game engine is proprietary. So if you're into like designing real-time graphics engines and stuff, maybe there's a real positive benefit to joining a company where they're doing that as opposed to sitting at home and trying to do it yourself, right? Like there's people that make indie games who that's what is the exciting part for them, is making the engine itself, not making the game.
Yeah, again, I'm not. This isn't meant to be disparaging. It's more of a question I would pose. Like, what is it
Mm.
that drives people in this particular space? And it's I guess largely the reason I'm not working there is I haven't perceived of something that would be better to switch into
Hmm.
that role explicitly. Now, if I was to make my own game on the side, and if I could make the time to do that, maybe take on a little project, it'd probably be really fun. And building the engine would be really fun,
Hmm.
partially because it's in service of this game that I've conceived of, and I'm building that right.
Hmm.
If it's kind of like when you go on the message boards and there's all these people. It's a cliche, big time, I know, but like all these people who are like, I have the best idea for a game, but I can't do art or program. I need to find people to make my game for me,
Hmm.
right? Like, why would you sign up for that as a software person, right? If you're just taking orders and building what they want, which is, I guess, that's where I'm ignorant. That's what I perceive it would be like to work at, say, EA, where it's like you're building an engine and it's fun, but like you're not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of like direction from above. Like, here's what we need the engine to do, right? Whereas, like, if it was your own project, like I remember that guy who was building, is it Voxel World, and he kind of started like I think I forget the details. He was making a game originally, but he got so obsessed with making the engine for that game, he kind of went and focused on that instead.
Hmm.
And I could see that because it's like a creative thing. Like the engine is now what you're building, and
Yeah.
that's fun, right? It's like maybe not the like actually typing out the code part is fun, but making an
Yeah.
engine that works is fun.
That's something that's been interesting to me as a visual effects artist, because like I've worked with Houdini, which is this procedural
Yeah,
thing, and I find it way more interesting to build like a procedural system that can build anything that I want it to,
mm,
compared to building the exact right explosion that you need for this
gotcha.
given shot. And
Hmm.
so I feel like I can totally appreciate the idea of like building an engine for a specific game versus building an engine for a whole variety of different genres of games and trying to make it work for all these different cases.
Yeah,
Because like they're using the same engine for FIFA as they are for Battlefront, right?
yeah,
Like it's not just a matter of like build something that will give you the exact inventory system that I need for this role playing game.
yeah.
It's like, how do I make something that's flexible and efficient at the same time? And I can see how that would be a interesting challenge, especially if you're in an environment where people are constantly giving you requests for, this is what I need, how can you provide this to me? And then they're like, okay, well, how can I fit that in and not break everything else?
Yeah, yep. You're right. I mean, I totally see that. I guess again, I'm seeing it through the lens of stereotypes. I'm
Hmm.
imagining working 60 hours a week at EA or something, kind of having people say, build this, and then just
Hmm.
building it, or going to big tech company X
Hmm.
and working, 50 hours a week for like a much better compensation, and then spending 10 hours on your passion project on the side instead, and kind of doing
Hmm.
exactly what you want. And that just seems like the obvious choice, I guess. And maybe I'm being obnoxious or saying that from a position of privilege or something, but that's where I kind of want to square this circle for people who go and do that.
Yeah, I think these days, I don't know, I guess it's not fair to generalize. I feel like the whole crunch thing is
Better,
was a
getting
bigger
better.
problem. I mean, they apparently like crunched people like crazy on Cyberpunk over in
Mm-hmm.
Poland.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely situations where it's bad, but like there was a whole EA spouse thing that happened, I think, back
Yeah,
in like 2005
quite a while now.
or 2006 or something. And I feel like my experience at EA was that the crunch is not nearly as endemic as it used to be. Like most of
Yeah,
the people who are putting in the hours love putting in the hours, and you can't tell them to go home after 40-hour week.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, if you're trying to go from kind of that perception and saying like work there for 60 hours a week versus this other place for 50, I don't think that really is a fair part of the equation.
I'm sure you're right. I actually recognize it's not fair. I guess just like that. That's how I have thought of it over the
Hmm.
past however many years, and it's probably completely off the rails. So I recognize that. Yeah,
But I mean, I can only speak about the place that I worked. I couldn't
yeah.
comment on what it's like anywhere else. I mean, I don't think anyone's crunched at Valve in a couple decades. Uh,
Is that a swing at them?
I mean, you have to make a game first, I guess.
Yeah, right. Just coast
uh,
on your money bags.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Cyberpunk was kind of notorious for it. Whereas I think Insomniac, they just put out the new Ratchet and Clank game, and I'm pretty sure I saw articles talking about how uh, there was no crunch at all for it.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's nice to see that moving in that direction. I have to run here.
Yep.
We should probably wrap it up. What
Yep.
did you think? I guess we didn't really touch on the third chapter as much.
I mean, that's kind of what was dredging up the memories of people telling us to quit in Vancouver and make
Yeah,
a game studio. Is just this idea of the indies trying to do that and not breaking even, and man, that's that's an intimidating lifestyle that I can't bring myself to do.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, so far 3 chapters in, I think the book is worth reading. I'm gonna certainly finish it.
yeah. I mean, I also like the first book. I would say both of Jason's books are quite worth reading. Especially, I mean, like I'm just simply interested in the subject matter. But I think if you weren't, like you mentioned the dairy industry version, I don't know. I might get I wouldn't say a laugh. It's kind of a sad story, but I might be very interested in the dairy industry version of this. But being games, it's just that much more interesting. So
Yeah,
I'll throw my my positive vote in there too.
yeah. Did you get to play anything this week?
Good one. Um,
So no.
I'm trying to think if I even did anything at all. No, I didn't do anything. Totally zero. It's just been a busy week.
That's.
I played some mahjong on my cell phone. That's it.
I mean, that counts. That's
Yeah. That we'll go with that. That's
okay.
my gaming for the week.
All right. I wrapped up Downtown Special Kunio-kun's historical period drama.
That name, man. That name.
I have to call it up ahead of time and read it just to make sure I
You get
get
all the
every
words of it.
syllable.
I really like that game. I know they re-released it. I know it's on. You played it on Switch or something,
Yep.
and I think that you said they fixed the slowdown. But like on the original Nintendo, it felt like this ambitious, awesome game that was just like you should just go and play it
Yeah.
or look at a video or something. Like it's basically in slowdown mode. I'd say 90% of the time, like the vast majority
Yeah.
of the time, it is in slowdown, NES slowdown mode, and it just makes it really hard to enjoy. I'll say that.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but um, on the Switch they actually have the original version and the new bug fix version. So it defaults to the new version,
Uh,
but you can actually opt to play it with all that slowdown and everything in it if you really want.
I like the choice to say, here's the original game. We didn't screw with it. Just play it.
Yeah.
And then kind of defaulting to the, as you call it, bug fix version to say like, yeah, this was what we wanted, but couldn't do at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting one to play because there's not very many play guides and stuff out there. Like trying to figure out what stuff was in itself a little bit of a challenge. So we just played it and enjoyed it, and my 6-year-old and I beat that together, and it was fun.
Yeah.
All three of us were walking around singing the songs from it.
Sweet. Very nice. Well, that's the positive note we should end on.
Yep.
Yes. All right. Well,
All right.
until next time, sir. We should do a follow up when we're both done the whole book.
Cool. Let's do it.
Cool. All right.
All right. Cheers.
Yep. Take care.